Hi, this is Tommy Stevens, and welcome to another in a series of technology tips brought to you by K2 Enterprises. In today's tip, we're going to focus on how you can unpivot data with Excel's Power Query tool. Power Query was first released for Excel all the way back with the 2010 version of Excel. At that time, Power Query was an add-in for Excel. Beginning though with the 2016 release of Excel, the functionality of Power Query became, shall we say, fully baked into Excel. And as a result of that, Power Query is starting to really become much more of a mainstream tool for many Excel users. Of course, Power Query makes it very easy for us to access and to link data from other data sources into our Excel spreadsheets. And those other data sources could be things like our accounting software applications, ERP, CPA or law firm practice management systems, CRM applications, just about any data source that we might want to, from which we might want to link data into Excel. We can certainly do that through Power Query. But one of Power Query's best features is its ability to cleanse or to transform our data to make it more useful and even easier to manipulate and analyze once we do get it into Excel. And one of the more powerful transformations that's available in Power Query is its ability to unpivot data. In this tip, that's what we're going to focus on, that is unpivoting data. Now, I guess we should first describe the need to unpivot data. Sometimes when we access data, we have data in Excel such as that currently appearing on your screen right now, we find that it has already been summarized for us in some particular format. In many cases, that format is going to be perfect, but in some cases, that format is going to cause us some challenges. For example, if I were trying to build a pivot table from the data that's currently shown on the screen, that would be a little bit challenging the way that data is currently summarized. And by the way, you can certainly see that I have hidden several columns and several rows there for presentation purposes. What I would probably want or need to do with this data is unpivot the data so that I had a separate column for my dates. Basically transform this data into three different columns, one that gives me my geographic market, another column that gives me my dates, and then a third and final column that gives me the values associated with each date. In the absence of the unpivot feature available in Power Query, that could be a little bit challenging and that could take perhaps a significant amount of time. So let's learn how to use the unpivot feature option available in Power Query to solve this challenge. Now, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go ahead and show all of the data that I had previously unhidden for presentation purposes, just so you can kind of see the totality of what we have going on here. I'll zoom out on this a little bit, and as you can tell, we've got a little bit over a year's worth of data for about 25 different geographic markets. Let's assume this is sales data, but it could be data of virtually any data type whatsoever. I would recommend step number one in this process is if your data is not already formatted as a table in Excel, that you convert it into a table. Now, I won't go into the virtues and benefits of using tables beyond just the idea that we really do need this to be a table to go into Power Query. But to convert this data into a table, if it were not already in a table format, I could simply click anywhere inside the data range and use a Control-T keyboard shortcut. Alternatively, of course, I could go to the Home tab of the ribbon, and from the Home tab of the ribbon, I could choose Format as a Table and select whatever table style I wanted to work with. In our example, our data is already in the format of a table, so this is an unnecessary step for me at this point, but again, I would suggest that you convert to a table before you start working with Power Query. With your data converted to a table, what we're now going to do is go to the Data tab of the ribbon in Excel 2016 or newer, and we are going to click in the far left-hand corner, we're going to click where it says Get Data. And where it says Get Data, then I'm going to choose from Other Sources, and I'm going to choose from Table or Range. Now you begin to understand why I suggested that you converted it to a table first. If we had not, then Power Query would convert it to a table now for us. It's just a little bit more direct, for me at least, to do that in advance. By the way, if you're running Excel 2013 or prior, you will have access to this feature, but you will have to download and install the Power Query add-in for Excel first. Once you download and install that add-in, you will find that Power Query appears as a separate tab on the ribbon. That is to say, it is not part of the Data tab. Beginning with Excel 2016 and continuing forward to Excel 2019, all of the functionality of Power Query resides on the Data tab of the ribbon. Now we are going to click this option that says From Table or Range to load that table of data into our data model. As that data gets loaded into Power Query, we can see that it resembles the format in which it resided on the face of the Excel spreadsheet just a few moments ago. At this point, though it's not an absolutely necessary step, I recommend that we delete any grand total columns and or grand total rows. You can see on the far right-hand side in my Power Query window that I do have a grand total column. I'm simply going to click on that column, and then I'm going to choose Remove Columns from the Home tab inside Power Query. Now, it's important to understand that that column is removed in Power Query only. That is to say, the source spreadsheet that fed this data into Power Query, inside that source spreadsheet, that column still resides. And likewise, even though I do not have any grand total rows in this data set, if I did, I would click and then choose the Remove Rows feature to remove a row. It just keeps things a little bit cleaner as we're going through the process of unpivoting this data. With our table loaded, with our grand total columns and or rows deleted, now we're ready to go through the process of unpivoting the data. To do so, we begin by selecting the column or columns that we want to unpivot. Now in this example, I want to unpivot all of the numerical columns, so I have clicked on the first column, that is the first numerical column, and then I will scroll over to the far right-hand side, hold down my Shift key, and click on the last column. I could have done that a little bit differently. I could have held down my Control key and clicked on each column individually, but obviously holding down the Shift key and selecting them all simultaneously is a much faster process. With all of the numerical columns selected, the process of unpivoting now is very, very simple. Inside Power Query, I'm simply clicking on the Transform tab of the Power Query ribbon, and then I will choose Unpivot Columns. Upon clicking Unpivot Columns, as you can see, now I have that 3-column format of data that I was looking for. I've got a column for each of my geographic markets, I've got a column for the date attribute, and I've got a column that represents all of the values. And obviously I could go and retitle any of these columns if I so desired. Assuming that I have no desire to retitle any of those columns, what am I now going to do with this data? Well, the simple answer is anything that I want to. For example, I can click on the Home tab of the ribbon in Power Query, that is, and then I can choose Close and Load, and as you will see momentarily, that has now loaded all of that data into an Excel spreadsheet. And now that that data resides in that Excel spreadsheet, I can build any type of report, any type of summarization that I want or that I happen to need to build. So, to kind of wrap things up for us, Power Query is obviously becoming a very popular tool for many Excel enthusiasts, and for many reasons, of course. One very simple reason is that it makes it very easy for novices, even those without substantial technical skills, to link data into Excel from external data sources. But another very important reason is that Power Query makes it very easy for us to perform our data transformations. That is, converting the data from one format to another, adding columns, filtering data, etc. And one of these very important data transformation options is that of unpivoting columns. It's a prime example of the functionality that we so desperately need with a tool like Power Query. So the next time that you might have a need to unpivot your data so that it's more usable in some other type of report or summarization, be sure to check out the Unpivot option inside Power Query. Thanks so much. We appreciate you stopping by, and we look forward to serving you again in the very near future.